Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. Brene Brown is an excellent author whose work occupies a unique, important, and often overlooked space in every self-development junkie's library, let's be honest. Tackling topics like vulnerability, courage, shame, belonging, and more, it's meant to open up a nationwide conversation about human elements missing from most everyday lives in a country like America. I have reviewed all her books, and she comes out with another one. What makes this one different? What can we learn from it? What can we expect? Is it actually good? Is it any better than her others? These are questions we're going to try to answer in this review, and basically every review on this channel. Going over a summary of it, including my thoughts on the chapters, standout quotes, who I recommend this book to, and what books to maybe check out next. Just so you guys know, there are affiliate links in the description, and if you guys buy anything through those links, like for example this book, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, and I want to make self-growth normal. Because people should not have to look this information up. It should just be mainstream knowledge. If you agree, please make sure to smash that like button. Brown has a tendency to talk pretty often about herself and her work, on occasion throwing in this big relation to larger things like here's how this applies to people today. She leans much of this weight on her writing skills, on the art of storytelling. It seems, however, that shifting from this to studies and quoting certain well-known researchers, sometimes even movies or novels or maybe songs, as well as honestly how she taps into these things, this one's a little bit more mature and balanced than I was expecting, which is probably saying a lot because her books are usually pretty mature, despite her fun-loving Southern personality and relatable sense of humor. This book, she wants to be an atlas for all of us, because with adventurous hearts and the right maps, she believes we can travel anywhere and never fear losing ourselves even when we don't know who we are. I love what she was saying about the differences between stress and overwhelm, using her experience as a server at a restaurant during college as a reference. We feel stress when we evaluate environmental demand as beyond our ability to cope successfully. But overwhelm is an extreme level of stress, an emotional or cognitive intensity to the point of being unable to function. And when I think of this, I think that what used to overwhelm me now kind of just stresses me. The following chapter about vulnerability and comparing yourself to others really stood out, where she took a plunge into the differences between jealousy and envy. It seems like through the structure here, understanding the language we use to navigate the emotions we associate with what matters to us is paramount to being the map makers and travelers that she's talking about. At the time I got to the boredom chapter, I realized that what she's doing in this book is just showing us all these insights about what emotions are, each one of them. And that adds so much cohesiveness to this book. Also explaining how some researchers believe awe-inducing events may be one of the fastest and most powerful methods of personal change and growth. She'll add something like, we don't have to stand on a cliff and see the northern lights to feel awe or wonder, although #bucket list, I definitely want to stand on a cliff and see the northern lights. But sometimes I feel like my dog Lucy is staring into my soul, and I feel a huge sense of wonder, like how did I end up living with an actual Ewok in my house? It's unreal. At this point writing the review, I realized in my video about what to expect from this book, I mentioned that there are, what is it, like 78 different emotions we experience that Brown talks about. Atlas of the Heart seriously went in on these emotions. But again, that balance of like, here's a little about me and here's what we learned in our research, it's there. We're talking about stuff like irony, sarcasm, nostalgia, wonder, envy, bittersweetness, curiosity, anguish, hopelessness, despair. No, they're not the same thing. And at the same time, she'll add in certain compliments to these, like info about the learning curve of the skill of setting realistic goals and what life is like when you're living with grief. I know, it's this thing of like, I don't want to talk about my feelings. No, never. Let's talk about feelings. And when I say talk about feelings, I mean about feelings. She goes much deeper and concisely too, which is astounding, into these things than just definition. It's definitions, differences, occasional humor, occasional instructions, like the do's and don'ts of empathizing versus sympathizing. And this very organized layout of these emotions that make Atlas of the Heart so good. Like if you add Brene Brown's personality onto that, it makes for a wonderful, very enjoyable piece of work. What's pretty significant about this is that Brown tends to understandably talk a lot about really certain emotions, not this whole breadth of them. So to hear her take on very, very specific individual ones, it was illuminating. A lot of them, maybe she has talked about them in other books, but nothing close to the degree in this one. And again, it was very concise. And the audio version was like 8 hours long. To talk about that many emotions so deeply in that amount of time it's It's very impressive to say the least. Here's one thing she said that stood out about embarrassment. If you've raised teens or tweens and been in their general vicinity, you know that they can oftentimes spend more time being embarrassed than not embarrassed. It's constant cringe when we start seeing ourselves through others' eyes, and it stays that way until we get to midlife and fall apart before we realize it just takes too much energy to try to manage perception. If I haven't said like 97 times in this review, she talks much more about her studies and research in Atlas of the Heart than I thought she would. Something else that fascinated me was the chapter about joy, where she discussed what joy does to us and why it's so hard to describe the feeling of joy. In my opinion, joy is such an underrated emotion, possibly because it may not be something that a lot of us experience or see every day. With joy, colors seem brighter, physical movements feel freer and easier, and smiling happens almost involuntarily. Who doesn't want that? I mean, probably anyone at a funeral or in the hospital finding out that a relative has a life-threatening disease. And then she talks about the relationship between joy and gratitude, describing it as an intriguing upward spiral. The more grateful we are, the more joyful we are, and the more joyful we are, the more grateful we are. Some of what you'll hear in Atlas of the Heart, which I also found interesting. I find so many things interesting in these books. I can't imagine how many times I use the word interesting in each review. You'll hear Brown correcting herself from her previous work, or bouncing off of things that she said about each of these emotions in her previous works. There's a passage in her other book, Braving the Wilderness, the first of hers that I actually ever checked out a long time ago. By long time, I mean 5 years. Talking about times and places where demographics of people were referred to as subhuman or animals. Dehumanization through language. And she explained here, for example, it came from some form of specifically disgust. No one talks about these things. No one. Like, Atlas was really a dive into emotions like unlike any other. Compared to her other works, I would say it's more cohesive. It's very organized, very balanced. What occasionally on this channel we'll refer to as the study-story ratio, which may not be practical because how do you quantify that, is again very balanced. The topic is useful and not often explored, and she was able to discuss it with the type of maturity and brightness and warm, loving personality we've maybe come to expect from her. This one I think is definitely going to be one of the top 5 of this year as well. Quotes: "If you were to put all of my memorabilia and artifacts together, you would get the most accurate story of who I was and what I valued at any one point in my life. You are afraid of surrender because you don't want to lose control, but you never had control. All you had was anxiety. Your lack of work isn't making me resentful. My lack of rest is what's making me resentful. Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone who wants to better understand his, her, or their emotions. It has minor, heavy left-leaning political undertones for if you're open to hearing those, and not ripping your teeth out and throwing them off the top floor of a New York City skyscraper. Direction 2. If you like this book, I think you would love her book, Gifts of Imperfection. Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you guys want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it, but hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe, but if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere, and I will see you then.